sorry to say, today's presenter, Karen Helga, cannot come to this conference because of the family situation. But this is the she's talking about this project, which is I also involved in this project as one of the members. So I'm going to try to explain a little bit this project. It is called 20 Coastal Stations. 6 artists traveling together in Norway for
you have to type in
3 weeks.
IMC every time. You just
Because two years ago,
so it's a little tedious, but that's okay.
Karen Helga, Norwegian artist Karen Helga, and also the one lady invited me to join this project. So totally 6 artists traveling together in Norway. Karen Helga already recorded her presentation, so you can see and you can hear the presentation today. Please enjoy.
Floating along with 20 coastal stations. August 13, 2015. I was waiting at the airport of Bodø, a Norwegian coastal city north of the polar circle. I was to meet 4 artists from 3 different countries. Bess Frimodig and Åsa Andersen from Sweden, Anu Vettanen from Finland and Katsutoshi Yuasa from Japan. They were here to join the project 20 Coastal Stations, a project Elisabeth Alsestrand and I had been working on for over 2 years. An 18 days long voyage would take us along the Norwegian coast, starting in Bodø in the north, then towards Sognefjordene and the island group Solen in western Norway. Experiences of nature and culture would go hand in hand with the exploration of woodcuts. We embarked on 20 coastal stations to challenge ourselves and to reveal as well as trace unknown terrain and rare phenomena. 20 coastal stations emerged from the international network of artists, craftsmen and theorists who work to preserve and further develop the vanishing Japanese woodcut. We live only for the moment in which we admire the splendor of the moonlight, the snow, the cherry blossom and the colors of the maple leaves. We enjoy the day, warmed by wine, without allowing the poverty which stares us in the face to restore our sobriety in this drifting. Like a pumpkin carried along by the current of the river, we do not allow ourselves to be discouraged for a moment. This is what is called the floating, fleeting world. This passage is from Tales from the Floating World of Pleasure, written by Asahi Ryoi in 1661. The Japanese woodcut artist Hiroshige lived from 1797 to 1858, portrayed a journey between Kyoto and Edo in the series 53 Stations and the Tokaido Road. Inspired by this, we have devised a sea trip of 20 stops along the Norwegian coast. Our cultures, that of Japan and Norway, share life by the sea as a common denominator. And in addition to drawing a picture of the trip, I reflect on how the project prompted unexpected encounters with the notions of the ancestral home and identity, and how the journey and the contrast in this floating world we were confronted with had impact on the work I produced for the exhibition. I recognize more and more the potential of woodcut to become a tool for contemporary social commentary. With the arrival of the plane carrying the artist, summer entered at last. We were in northern Norway, where the night was devoid of darkness. A landscape, magnificent and wide, unfolded beneath a never-ending dome of transparent blue-colored sky, lit up by a bright sunlight. My photos show a turquoise sea and an endless horizon, and they look like travel magazines advertisements. But I couldn't land in this landscape. Within myself, a continuous tension rose, forcing an unsettled body and soul. I wondered if it was the responsibility for all the small organizational pieces that would need to be in place that caused this tension. After a week of exploring north of Norway, we boarded Hurtigruten, a somewhat luxurious tourist ship, which travels along the coast of Norway to continue to the next stop. Hours slipped away while sitting in the panoramic room, the horizon slowly floating by, and occasionally deserted stony islands broke its line. After a while, we approached Western Norway and my home county, Sogn og Fjordane. Barely perceptible, the physical presence around the ship changed. After having lived in constant light, the first raindrops alerted another landscape. Heavy grey formed clouds over the coastal town as the ship anchored by the docks. The dense green tinting the mountainsides promised a more humid climate. The wide landscape was replaced by enveloping mountains. Something happened within me. That strong inner tension which I'd known during the trip so far evaporated. I was home. The project 20 coastal stations and the trip along the coast showed me how strongly I identify with the coastal landscape of Western Norway. Stronger than I thought. Soland, the island and its nature and people makes my childhood paradise. Dotted by islands, Soland's landscape lies at the furthermost tip of Western Norway. Steep mountains rise vertically from the sea. All is weather-torn and constructed from stone formations. It's life between sheep and fish in a forbidding landscape, where occasionally there's a green spot or a white wooden house. Here my uncle Ingvald lived toiling on a coastal small holding. To survive, he had to develop an intuitive relationship with the landscape. Japan has a long-standing tradition of intuitive learning. Through a long observation of the teacher or the landscape, one acquires new knowledge and skills without either knowing or recording. I recall a primary school trip. We were 4 10-year-olds who borrowed a rowboat. None of us could row. I placed myself strategically in the middle of the boat, while the others enthusiastically grabbed hold of the oars. After many "oi" and "oh no" and splashing, we ended up in the middle of the bay. Panic replaced enthusiasm. I grabbed the oars, and with steady pulls at the oars, I rowed the boat back to the pier. Knowing what to do came from having observed Uncle Ingvald all those years. This insight gleaned from our adventure in the rowboat proved to me that I hold the Westland landscape in my bones. And in a global world I reflect upon, one can learn how to navigate in unknown terrain. But can one put down roots and transplant one's ancestral soil in an alien landscape? October 6, 2016, the exhibition 20 Coastal Stations opened at the Sogn og Fjordane Museum of Fine Art. There are 2 main approaches one can recognize in the new work I developed during the project 20 Coastal Stations. Landscape as a tool to explore identity, and moku-hanga print as a tool for social commentary. Prior to the arrival of the artists involved with 20 coastal stations, I cleared my family boathouse in Solen, on the west coast of Norway. I found driftwood that my uncle Ingvald had collected living on a coastal small hold. The driftwood was to be used as firewood in the winter. I brought back the driftwood weathered by seasons and seawater to my workshop. These were the traces revealing a fascinating wooden grain structure. I decided to systematically catalogue the driftwood, and in so doing it led to a more conceptual art piece with the title Old Traces in a New Era, a timeline. I used a rubbing technique called takuhon. Thin paper is placed over moist wood pieces. With a stamp made from a fabric ball, I push lightly and steadily with great care into the paper. Gradually imprints emerge from within the wooden block, in dark and light nuances. Stone formations, lines of the horizon and a wider horizon beyond pull together a timeline in this moment. It is a timeline that reaches to its both the past and the present. Influenced by the water and the pressure of my hand, the paper makes an image. Eventually it becomes a scroll that can be displayed and unrolled and then put away for the next time. On Hurtigruten I felt a great peace. I sat in a panoramic room with a view to the horizon and a bokashi-colored sky. Suddenly I was challenged by contrasts in this floating world. My computer threw news into my lap. Refugees fought against the waves at Lampedusa in the Mediterranean. This experience inspired me to inquire if woodcut image of a landscape could become a topical social commentary. I made an installation consisting of 3 small showcases and 1 animation. The animation is called Freedom, Raft, Flight. The boxes have titles Your Own Horizons, Captured on Film, and Indigo, Blue Time. In the installation I explore the contrast I experienced there and then. The beautiful peace, war, flight. The animation shows 1 origami crafted boat. I used woodcut to give the sheet a pattern. The paper boat gradually changes into a flat sheet of paper, a raft. The size of the boxes is taken from a souvenir chocolate box. In 2 of the boxes I've used mirrors. The back is open, and by holding a photo of a horizon in front, one can see the horizon as if one were at the sea. In 1 of the boxes I attached a woodcut of an indigo sky. The boxes are in some way a prototype for souvenirs. It's a portable horizon in a box. The horizon has a peep show, so you can expand your horizon wherever you are. Stone formations and mist, a journey through Soland. By using woodcut, I approached a familiar environment through a new analysis. Doing so, I would like to arrive at a conscious understanding why Soland's landscape fascinates me. I've reached new observation points in the landscape. A composition of a landscape is affected by its observation post. Changing this point brings new observations and points of view. I seek new views to develop these into abstracted expressions. Science in the landscape can be read as nature's written language. As a matter of fact, I still narrate my relationship with the landscape. Maybe my landscape can be open to others. Our digitized community provides increased availability, efficiency and flexibility for both work and privacy. Nature becomes an object through this development. Nevertheless, it is natural phenomena like fog that we cannot control. Dark shapes emerging in a fairy landscape may be graphic signs that can be read as omens and as reminders of nature's majestic stillness. In the picture landmark, I have mounted a thin sheet to the print. On this thin sheet, I have printed details and dark tones that gives a physical deepening to the print. Passing by, the sheet of paper shivers as a fog fading. This series of 3 images in blue tones is called To the West, Fjord and Havrand, or Horizon. Each print is a variation of the same section in my childhood's landscape, Solund. In 1790, Xavier de Maistre wrote Voyage autour de ma chambre. He investigated if it was possible to apply one's traveling mindset taking a trip around his bedroom. By using the method of Xavier de Maistre and the conscious shift of an observation point, I became fascinated by the shapes in between the stone formations. I removed the stone formations which sculpt the landscape. By placing bits of landscapes off as remnants, dividing it into the elements, into a treasure hunt, I open a fresh synthesis of known elements. Midwinter 2017. The floating world brought me to Oslo. I and 2 of the other participants in the project met at the National Museum of Art, Architecture and Design in Oslo. We were invited by Trine Nordkvelde, Research Resources Assistant, to look at ukiyo-e prints from the museum collection. Guided past the guards, we walked into a room furnished with a big table. The door was carefully locked, and we were told that the bullet point pens and ink were banned in this room. A sense of reverence descended as the first prints were laid out on the table. Free of glass and frame, the images shimmered overwhelmingly in a glory of colors, lines, bokashi, karasuri, and delicate kimono patterns. We saw, amongst others, Bienga and Surimono. Fluttering by in the stream of images, one startled me. At first glance, the woodcut looks like one of the many that I associate with ukiyo-e. A woman sits on the floor in front of a wooden lattice. A broad black line etches the kimono of the woman and forms a central element in the image. Several long pins form a wreath around the head and her sculpted hair. Through this intimate meeting of eye and print, the picture reveals other layers. I distinctly sense that there is a sinister undertow beneath its initial impression. The pattern in the kimono transmits unrest. Several flame and spirit-like shapes spread across the fabric. The deep black bottom edge of the kimono imprisons the figure within the picture. Both kimono and hairpins seem to weigh down the figure of the woman curled on the floor. Grasping the wooden lattice, with the right hand the figure is stuck in a grid. Her face is either painted white or free of makeup. More and more, the figure reminds me of a caged bird with clipped wings. The print is part of a series 8 motifs that parody Yoshiwara around the clock, or Utigawa Kunisada. Utigawa Kunisada lived from 1786 to 1865 and is also known as Utigawa Gyokuni III. He was one of the most popular and productive ukiyo-e artists in 19th century Japan. In Europe, however, he was long regarded as an uninteresting representative of ukiyo-e. His prints were thought to be too complex, unclear, and extravagant use of vulgar colors. Yoshiwara was a famous and officially regulated brothel district in Edo. Poor families rarely had no other choices than selling their daughters to a brothel as maids. Sometimes they were trained in traditional Japanese arts, such as the tea ceremony, calligraphy, ikebana, music and dance. More often, the girls ended up in the lowest rank of brothels, the so-called komise. In these lowest grade brothels, the girls were displayed behind a wooden lattice called harimise, a practice which finally vanished in 1916. the lives of the girls were brutal and very short. Confronted by the print Evening Sun against the window lattice at the museum in Oslo unfolded the artistry of Utawa Kunisada. I have been inspired by the beautiful light blue bokashi shapes in Hiroshige's woodcuts. Meeting this print, I wondered if Utawa Kunisada's image was a critical social commentary. The Project 20 coastal station brought me new tools. I applied Japanese woodcut in print and sculptural shapes, in showcases and animations. With mica, I found a new way of working with the surface so that grey tones take on a shine. Topical social commentary, identity and intuitive learning find a place in my creative landscape. We, the participating artists, still have contact and new ideas will arise. So also after the exhibitions, the journey continues.
I think finish our presentation. If you have any question about the project, you can answer, not our work.
Did you go to all 20 different places?
Actually, we went to more than 20 places. Not only the big port, even such a small places we went to there. Then stop by and walk around the place.
And the work was done afterwards.
Afterwards, we had the exhibition in two places, one in the museum and another one in the gallery. Both of them is in Norway. So we are still thinking about to have a exhibition again, maybe in Japan or Sweden or Finland, because we are many artists come from Japan, Sweden, Finland, and Norway, so it's a very international project. So really looking forward to the place, continue to the project and the exhibition. Okay.
Were all the artists printmakers?
Yes. Most of them came to Mira to learning the moku-hanga, so they are very familiar with moku-hanga.
And is that how you met at Mira? Is that how you met each other?
I met them in last conference in Tokyo.
And you decided then to do that project in Tokyo?
In the last conference, Karen Helga already have some ideas about this project. Then she approached me to join.
I think it was clear, but I wasn't sure. The boat trip was 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I want to do that.
Yes.
Good experience.
And so that was summer, wasn't it?
Yes, summertime.
Summer. What is the Norwegian summer? What months or weeks?
We travel like in September, so
September.
it's like end of summer. So still,
So-
it's not white night, but
August.
Sorry, August. Yeah,
Yeah,
end of
August.
August. Still,
It's the same as Scotland.
it's really end of summer. Yeah.
People forget how long Norway is. It's a long country.
Such a long
The
country.
coastline is enormously long.
Research.
Yes, I mean, incredibly, the distance are quite unimaginable.
Yeah. The border is over the Arctic
Yeah.
line, so it's really north part of Norway. Then we studied the border to Bergen, Bergen is really south of Norway.
Bergen is about the same latitude as Shetland Islands,
Is it?
north of Scotland, north of Britain.
Were you able to see any of those amazing northern lights? Is that, do you see that in Norway?
saw a little bit because it is summertime, so it's not so clear, but we saw the little bit.
Winter time.
Wonderful.
Oh, the Northern Lights.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.